difficulties because you're usually the tech guy.
This is one of my first, so it's
Anybody else from central office? Kim is here, but district state aid.
Todd Bravo here.
Bill Knofchinsky here.
And anybody else? We have Mike Marty, I think, and Sue Miller. Is Elise here? Or is that everybody? Did everybody say yes?
Rick West as well.
Oh yeah, Rick West.
Yeah, I'm pretty soon I don't count, so you know.
That's true. All right. Now if everybody can mute, because we are going to turn it over to Mike Marty and Sue Miller. So thank you.
All right, I am pulling up a PowerPoint. Thank you, Mel. Always good to be part of the other group in your district. We are going to be spending, normally Andy Witter does this presentation with us, but unfortunately he had a conflict today, and Rick West is going to pinch hit, so we appreciate that. My PowerPoint takes a couple seconds to load, so I'm kind of stalling, but as it is loading, we're here to give you an update of an LRB study that started in 2010 called System Preservation. Was fairly successful, but the implementation didn't go quite as well as I thought, and we know that the LRB didn't fund a study just for 5 counties to do, and for some reason you're not seeing my presentation. Can anybody see anything?
We can see it.
Why isn't it coming up on that screen? All right,
I can see it, Mike.
Mike.
all right, I'll go with that then. All right, so we did this study. I'm gonna switch this around a little bit. We did this study a couple of years ago. It was a pilot study of 5 counties. And the purpose of the study was a county engineer, who's no longer a county engineer by the name of Sue Miller, had an idea that I don't have enough money for my system, so I want to turn a road back to gravel. And the LRB said, you know, well, we can look into that, but that's, you know, let's look at the bigger problem. That is, you don't have enough money. And so they funded what we called system preservation. And in doing so, we worked with 5 pilot counties. And with those 5 pilot counties, we didn't develop a solution, we developed a process. And so we worked with each of those 5 to measure what their gap was, gap being defined as how much money they need to manage their current system versus how much they currently have. That's the gap. And then how can we minimize that gap? What are things that we can do to minimize that gap? So we worked with each of those 5 pilot counties to work on solutions unique for them. And the thought process was to then deliver that larger mega process to the rest of the counties to implement. So we think it worked well, but the problem is it was a little bit daunting. And so the LRB then funded a second study that we're currently working on right now to do 2 things. One is, since the initial stuff worked well for the 5 pilot counties, we don't want to just include counties, we want to look at the cities as well. So we have a TAP, or a technical assistance panel, that is comprised of the 5 pilot counties, along with some city engineers and some county engineers that have interest in implementing this stuff. And so that's the list that you see in front of you. And these folks have been very active in working with us. We're going to show you what they developed, and we're going to ask you how we can implement it next. So with that, as I stated earlier, it was a study that didn't come up with a specific solution, but more of a process. And when we started the whole process, you know, couple of the things that we discovered is that, first of all, you know, you folks, you county engineers, are sometimes your worst enemies because you're very resourceful. You can get things done on limited budgets, and you've done it year after year after year after year, and you've done it through a Band-Aid approach. But we're finding with, you know, inflation, with funding being continually limited or reduced, it's tougher and tougher to do. And so we wanted to step back and say, okay, what are some longer term solutions that we can do that are sustainable? And at the same time, rather than doing it and, you know, just responding back to elected officials, let's bring them along in the process and have them be part of the solution. And so that's what we did when we developed this project. Back in 2016, when it was finally done, We came up with a great report, a resource guide. It's very detailed. It has 168 pages. And so it's not the easiest thing to pick up and say, okay, I'm going to implement this. We also developed an online tool, and that's what you see on your right, where it steps you through the process step by step, click by click. And so as you go through this, it's a very navigable process. Once again, we thought it was okay to use, but we found out that only a couple agencies tried using it, just because it does take time, it does take a commitment, and it does take some resources. And so, you know, when we went back to the drawing board, and we'll kind of clue you in on that. But if you have any interest, both the report and this navigable diagram here are available online at the LRB. You can just quickly type in system preservation. You can kind of see what it has to offer. To give you an inside look of what we did back with the pilot counties is that after we measured the gap, remember I defined the gap as your current funding versus what your needs to really manage that system well. We said, okay, here are 8 strategies that might help you minimize or reduce that gap. And we allowed each of the pilot counties to pick any three of these 8 strategies. And those are indicated by the gold check mark boxes. We also found out through the process that some of these agencies had already implemented some of these strategies, and those are indicated by the blue chevrons. And lastly, some of the agencies thought, you know what, in addition to what we're going to be doing on the study, I want to invest some of my own money and take it a little bit further. And you can see those by the green dollar signs. So the matrix that you see here on the screen really provides you a glimpse of the various strategies that were implemented by the 5 pilot counties. Now, I can say they were successful, but you know what, I'm only a consultant. And so we actually talked to some of the pilot counties and got their input, and we're going to highlight some of the success stories. First of all, remember Anoka was a pilot county. Halfway through the process, Andy Witter, who was the assistant at Anoka, became the Sherburne County engineer. And so we actually got a twofer on this, where he did it both at Anoka and Sherburne. And a couple of highlights that we found out from Anoka County / Sherburne is that, first of all, they used it to go get more money. They actually passed a 0.5% local sales tax, which yielded them almost $6 million more. And they could do this a little bit faster because if you jump down to the bottom bullet, they actually went out and worked with several local cities and specific user groups to get their input on what is important and, you know, how important is your transportation system, which roads do you want us to see to do better, but also, you know, maybe we should right size our system, that is by doing some turnbacks. They did all of this by developing their first transportation plan, which they called Driving Forward. And so in the process, Anoka County got more money, they got a long-term plan, but they really got buy-in from all of their local agencies and their citizens groups at the same time. Another pilot county was Stearns County, Jody Tyke up in the St. Cloud area. You know, Jody also had I would say, you know, a little bit more of a difficult board to work with. But as she did that, she actually used the gap analysis tool to show them, you know what, here's what I can currently fund, and here's the roads that I'm going to overlay. But in reality, here's the roads I should be overlaying. And by doing that, she actually showed that, you know, there was a gap. And by doing that, those elected officials agreed that we got to pass some more money. And so she actually got both a wheelage tax and a gas tax passed throughout the process. She also did a lot of public engagement, trying to get the local agencies to know exactly what shortages they do have and how big that shortage is. And she did that to help pass those 2 revenue sources, that gas tax and that sales tax. And so similar to what Sherburne County did, she used a lot of the information publicly to get more money financed. Lastly, Otter Tail County, which some of us claim as the poster child, they really went all in on this process. We have Rick West here. I'm going to let Rick talk about the success that they had up in Otter Tail County. So Rick.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. I'll just start off with is I think the quote or my quote at the top of the slide, I'm certainly going to read it to you, but, it really opened our eyes up and caused us to focus on from where we were with the system analysis and the gap analysis, and where do we want to go once we knew what that number was. And for us, when we did the gap analysis, I think it was like on an annual basis for our system preservation work, I think we're around at a $13 million gap. And we presented that to our highway committee, as it was called at that time, which was two commissioners and myself, and I think our administrator. And Mike was in the room when we did that. And, the room got real quiet. But through that whole analysis process, to that point, we knew we were short. We knew we were short a lot for funding to maintain what we have in place. And in that room, the question, once that, the amount was in front of us, the question, okay, now we know this, what do we do with it? And that was really, I think, a turning point for us to say, okay, do we just keep doing what we're doing, or do we take this further and, let our citizens know where we're at, what our road conditions are today, and where we're headed? We chose, and when I say we, the county board and, myself and staff said, we've got to take this out and begin a process to develop a plan. So that was kind of the turning point for us. I think we were successful. It took, I suppose, Mike described the modules that are available to use. And, we went all the way through to the end. One has the ability to do it a module at a time, which I think would work. But I honestly believe when you get into it, you really begin to see that you need a long-range plan that's documenting your visions and your goals. So some highlights, I guess, I would provide this morning that we found along the way was that the public doesn't understand roads, how they're funded, as a general statement. We work in that world every day. They drive them. It's about all they know. If there's a pothole or it's rough. So we really put together a pretty strong public engagement process with our board and with our citizens. And I think we had 15, 20 public meetings over the course of a couple of years to really educate folks on, where we're at and where we're headed with our roads, our highway system, with the pavement conditions. We were at, once we focused on this, we were in fact operating the maintenance for our system, the preservation, not entirely from a, worst first mindset, but a good part of what we're doing was worst first. And we changed, we abandoned that very quickly once we began to look at the details of where we're at and need to develop some sort of tiered system, which we did. So, platinum through bronze, platinum certainly being the highest level, bronze being the lowest. And as we educated, did our open houses, we made the point to tell our public that, the bronze system will probably not see another contract surfacing project on. Those roads, there's about 135, 40 miles of that bronze level or tier. We'll maintain those as best we can over time without, saying the dreaded term, revert to gravel. Although we had that question brought to us a number of times from citizens, and what do you think? And our response was, well, at some point with our bronze level, maybe a portion of silver, that may happen. Educating our commissioners and I would add the public, hugely important. Wayne Johnson, who some of you know is longtime commissioner here, excellent commissioner. His quote there, "We can't afford not to do this," and we're referring to as the development of a plan process. Another example of the, county commissioner comment, one of our now retired Commissioner Doug Hibbs, we were talking about developing the plan, and, he said, what's this going to cost if we, to put it into motion and run it to a point where we have a bona fide long-range plan? And, the question of the board meeting, I said, I don't know, probably $100,000, whatever it is, I don't know. Well, he said, number one, we need to get some prices to do that. And number two, he said, what's the value if we had to replace our entire road system, take the bridges out of it? He said, total replacement? I said, well, it's $1 million a mile, 1,000 miles. He said, well, that's over $1 billion, and we're not going to spend $100,000 to figure out where we're at and where we want to be. So, it's those kind of conversations I think you have through the process from the board side that, they want to be educated. They want to know what the future holds. So another couple of comments I would make is that, what you end up doing, and we're still growing it, is, everybody's heard the term asset management, and that's really where we ended up with, is that we had a, icon system we used for pavement management. We had it, we weren't using it. We are now. That's a huge step for Otter County. We've got, we had good data to work on the gap analysis, and if I had a comment to make on that process, we typical, I guess, the engineering mindset, are these numbers close enough? Are they accurate numbers? And I think having gone through that and looking back, I wouldn't have put so much worry and effort into trying to figure out, well, is this gap, is it 13.1 or 12.9? It doesn't matter. It's a big number. So it's important to have your gap analyzed, but we lost a little sleep over that, and there was really no need to do that. We did utilize in development of the transportation plan. We did use a 25-member plan steering committee, which was really the folks that guided the process. We used SRF to facilitate process, and that group, you had to educate them on highways and funding and all of that, which took some time, but they became a really valuable asset. And even today, some of those members should go to a public meeting and, you're talking about transportation, and they'll pipe up in the audience and say, well, we went through this process, and, these numbers are real in our future. But what it shows us is real. A plan, I think, also, it doesn't remove all the politics from project selection, but it removes a lot of the politics. We try to keep the plan in front of our board when, you go through a tough spring, you got some roads that you got a lot of breakup, and one commissioner wants to move that project up. And if, the board understands we have a plan, and usually it doesn't take us long, it's usually the board sorts that out themselves, because two of them will say, hey, well, we got this plan. We agreed we're going to operate the system based on the plan. And, it's been very helpful in that sense. And I think it's a plan really, I don't know if memorializes is the right term, but it's a written document that you've described your long range vision and goals for your transportation system. So it's in black and white, and new board members can refer to it. It takes time to develop. It takes effort, and I think for us as Otter Tail County, if we would have tried to do this in-house, I don't know that we would have got it. I don't know if we would have got it completed. If we did, it would take us much longer, and it would not have been, I don't think, of the quality it is. I think, I'm not saying an agency cannot do it in-house, but what we needed was somebody, in this case, the consultant who facilitated the process, and we had timelines for the project and kept us on task. And I think, that was hugely important. It's very easy relating to Rick West. I mean, you get buried in the trenches and trying to fight off the alligators when you're trying to drain the swamp, and things get pushed back and delayed, and pretty much, pretty soon 6 months goes by and nothing's been accomplished or advanced. So that was important for us. The tagline on our plan is better roads for a better Otter Tail County, our values and our priorities. And I think that sums it up fairly well. We were successful with very little public pushback. We, local option sales tax, and also a wheelies tax, which went to $20 per vehicle in beginning of 2018 from 10. And that provides us about probably about $4.5 million additional funding annually. So, our gap is still there. It's less, and our public understands that we've taken our deterioration curve overall on our system. We haven't fixed our problem as far as maintaining the system, but we've slowed the decline. I mean, that's the outcome, and that's the result of the analysis and the planning, is that there's still basically a $7 million gap in the system. And I would note also that that our original gap analysis, we were at whatever it was, 12, 13 million. Well, when you factor in the additional funding, and we did a pretty substantial update. We do an update every year when we receive our annual, or our condition ratings are run by MnDOT every 2 years. So in between there, we have kind of minor update, and one major update we did. We looked at our gap again, and that original gap analysis was pretty darn accurate. I mean, it's if you look at additional funding versus gap we calculate today, you can add it up, and it's really close to that original $12 to $13 million gap. So I think overall, and Mike, I don't know how much time I have here, but we probably, my only regret in this process is I wish I'd have done this 20 years ago. It's just an amazingly helpful, I would use the term tool, to continue to educate your public. There's a saying out there, one of the single biggest issues with communications is the illusion that it's occurred. And that's why I think, as we work our plan, if you will, we try to, every time we meet with the Township Officers Association, we bring it up. We do just kind of a 15-minute review and refresher on it. And, once you do the plan, it's really important to, number one, have a way to update it, and number two, a way to keep it out in view of the public. And so they know, they know what it is, they know where you're headed, they know what your goals are, etc. So, Mike, I think I'll stop there. In my opinion, it was well worth our effort. It takes time. It does take effort. It takes some resources, but the end result is well worth all of that, right? And then some. So, Mike, I think I'll close there and turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Rick. Great job of summarizing it. That's the first time I heard the $1 billion quote. I knew that you couldn't afford to do it, but going from $1 billion and investing $100,000 makes good sense, which it did. And as I said earlier, Otter Tail County really was committed to doing this process. So what we want to do, that was the history. That's what we've done in the past. And as I stated earlier, I've been doing work for the LRB for 36 years, and I'm pretty sure that their mindset is not to fund a pilot study program and have it ended there. And unfortunately, that's where we kind of ended with some system preservation, is that the implementation didn't take off like we thought it would. And so the LRB charged us with coming up with a different style of implementation, which Sue is going to walk us through. But it's really a marriage of what worked for the pilots, some lessons learned that we did from the county road safety plans, and also some lessons learned from the pandemic and Zoom stuff. So I'm going to turn it over to Sue and let her talk about our next steps.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mr. West. You know, you all know that you heard Rick say a couple times that this was overwhelming and it could be a little daunting because it's such a big effort, but well worth it. So when you're looking at how do you tackle something like this, you don't eat the elephant in all one bite. We broke it down into 3 different modules. And, you know, we had a lot of conversation with the TAP, with the pilot counties transferring knowledge to the new counties that were on the technical advisory panel. And we talked about what's the best way to do that. And so 3 different silos, if you will. First, that gap issue. And Rick is absolutely right. You know, when the pilot counties were developing this, we spent a huge amount of time debating how accurate we needed to be in defining the gap. It's a big number. You need to make sure you calculate that number in a credible way that you can document and show people if they ask. And ultimately, the bigger issue is how can you communicate the credibility of that number to your elected officials? And I think that's what we learned is where the better investment of your time is in that communication and that getting that number established with your county board and your public as a whole. Once you do that, then you can move into what are the strategies out there that maybe your county would want to apply to trying to tackle that gap. In no way are you going to close the gap completely, but you are going to slow the bleed. And you are going to create understanding by the public as to why it's happening. You know, one of my concerns being a county engineer in all of this, and there's a lot of newer county engineers in District 8 too, is elected officials and the public, some of the public, or maybe it's just Freeborn County people, had a tendency to blame the engineer. If that road was falling apart, well, then the engineer's not doing his or her job and taking care of that road. And when I would share problems with the county board, sometimes it got spun on, well, you're not spending the money right. Well, by educating the county board and talking about these different strategies, it helps to establish that baseline that we are doing the best we can with the limited funds that we have, with all the needs that we have. So you can go through this process and pick out which one of those strategies you think would resonate best with your county board, for your system, for what your needs are. And then one of the best parts about this process for me is its real-time implementation. I've loved all the time I've gotten to work on LRB, RIC stuff, but sometimes it's frustrating to wait 12, 18, 24 months to get to get all of your implementation, or wait to get to implement. This way we can implement in real time. The other best part is the peer-to-peer exchange piece. And learning from each other is really what made this whole project fly in the end. So with that, the TAP created a module system to go through this guided coaching process. As Rick said, if you don't have somebody to guide and help you with the timeline and help with facilitation, we all get busy, we all get bogged down with everything that's going on in our world, putting out fires. So we created this system to be a guided paced system over about 15 months. That can vary based on your agency. But over that 15-month course of time, there's up to 38 hours of one-on-one coaching time that would be provided to you throughout these modules. So at any point in time in the process, if you have a problem or issue or challenge, you can pull that coaching time in to help address that. Module 1 would start with the invitation, very similar to what we're doing today, to give just an overview of what system preservation is and what it would mean for your system. We'll invite you in, we'll see if you want to be a participant in going through in the first cohort is Mr. Kuffner's word that I really like that word. So if you want to jump into this as being one of the next ones to go through this and see the benefits of this, then we'll bring you back for module 2. And in module 2, we'll do a really deep dive into that gap analysis. You know, what level of detail do you need? How can you communicate it with your elected officials? How do you build credibility? What are the other resources that are out there for my agency to take a look at? And what are the general overview of the strategies that I can think about and decide which one I want to work on? Very quickly, we bring you back for module 3, giving you some time to pick out those 3 strategies. Then we'll really dig in and work hard on those 3 strategies over the next couple months, working with your staff and the resources that you have on the strategies that you picked. When we get to module 4, we're gonna take a little break in the system and dialed right into the process is that peer-to-peer exchange. You know, we had 5 pilot counties that shared information. Imagine the stuff we're going to learn when we have cities and a whole bunch more counties going through this. We're going to hear all kinds of other better lessons learned. So once we share all of that and put that data together, inevitably you might want to change your approach. So we'll come to module 5 and we'll take a look at those systems that you picked, those strategies you picked, and see, does it still fit based on what you heard at the peer-to-peer exchange and based on where you're at on implementation so far? Are we on the right track? Do we need to retool and redirect and reassemble where we need to be? And then we'll move to module 6. And that's really your final check-in. Is this ready? You know, is the implementation getting you what you wanted? What's next? What are the other pieces that we need to pull together to make this fully successful? We'll survey all the agencies all the way through the process. And when we get to module 7, we'll share the results of that. Equally as important to what is successful in a project like this is what is not successful. And we want to make sure that nobody gets fired in this process. There's county engineers that lost their job by making suggestions for things like jurisdictional transfers. A county engineer in Freeborn County almost lost her job by using the word unpave when they didn't have enough money to take care of their system. We want to make sure that doesn't happen to anybody. So you've heard about the 7 modules. Let me share just for a minute about this investment of time and the commitment. And yes, it is an investment of time. I'm going to put it to you this way. It's kind of like the chicken or the pig commitment. The chicken with your breakfast provided 1 egg this morning, and maybe a week later she's going to provide another egg for you. But the pig's making that all-out commitment. When that bacon goes on your plate, the pig is all in. And for this process, you really need to be all in. You can't be just dabbling in this with an egg at a time. Sounds a little daunting, sounds a little overwhelming, but I promise you it will be well worth it, and it will change how you manage your system. So going through that whole process, then specifically, I want you to think a little bit about what strategies are out there and how that might work for your system. And Rick did a really good job kind of talking about those strategies and saying what might work and what might not work and the things that they picked. So for your first example, jurisdictional transfers, like I mentioned, you use the word turn back to townships. County engineers have lost their job over that. We want to be careful of how you message that, but we would help you through that whole process. How would you message jurisdictional transfers? How would you follow the state statute and the guidance on that? What are the things that can help you get through that whole process? And Mike, are you advancing to the next slide?
Yes.
Okay, just taking a minute. And then if you get into the next strategy, which is the tiered system approach, that tiered system approach, Rick talked heavily about that. You just put some meat on the bones. We're all managing our system based on priorities. This makes very clear criteria of why this road's getting plowed maybe twice a day versus another road that's getting plowed once a day. When you move into revert surfaces, hopefully none of you ever have to have that conversation with your county board, because although it's a strategy in this toolbox, it would be one of the very last strategies we'd ever want anybody to have to use. Transportation plans is strategy number 4. In no way, shape, or form does 38 hours of guided one-on-one coaching time get you a transportation plan, but it certainly can help you lay out certain concepts and pieces of that to walk you through communicating with your county board and with your public as a whole. The next couple strategies kind of all flowed together. Establishing performance standards for your county is huge for creating that understanding with your county board and with your public on what level of investment gets you this level of pavement quality or of a system continuity. And so by establishing, hey, we want to make sure that all our high volume roads stay in that platinum category with a pavement quality index of 80 or above. And to do that, that means we have to invest at this level in this tier of pavements. Helps the board understand where the funding comes from and where the funding is going to go. And it really leads right into project prioritization and helping you establish that criteria ahead of time as to why you're going to fund certain projects and not others. Like Rick mentioned, you're going to avoid that worst to first kind of approach and that reactionary approach. And you're going to have criteria there. And again, as Rick said, this doesn't take all the politics out of that process, but it makes it so much easier if you get buy-in from those elected officials and the public that this is a criteria that we think is important. Inevitably, this leads to we need more money. And this part of the process can help walk you through what are the choices. Now, wheelage tax, If you don't have a lot of vehicles registered, local option sales tax, if you don't have a huge economic center, it's not maybe going to have the same impact as it did in Stearns County or Otter Tail County, but those are options as well as a whole boatload of other options that can help boost some revenue stream. Inevitably, county boards start to make better choices, in my opinion, on reinvesting in their local road and bridges versus some of the other choices that they have to make where they invest that those levy dollars. And last but not least is that leveraging that knowledge that you all have on new maintenance techniques. And some of you guys are out there doing microsurfacing or white topping or whatever it might be. And if that's a tool that you want in your toolbox, we'll help you put that strategy into place by helping you develop specifications, giving you cost per mile, mixed prices, whatever it might be. So with that takes us to next steps. I'm going to kick it back to Mr. Marty.
All right, thanks, Sue. So as you heard, we have identified a way to move implementation forward. And the LRB has funded the pilot studies. They funded the development of these modules. The next question was, how do we actually bring out the implementation itself? And in working with the TAP, one of the suggestions was possibly using the state aid administrative account. And Chris is going to now lead us through a conversation of, do we want to do that? The other question that we discussed at the TAP was, with the commitment that Sue talked about, how much financial commitment should come from a local agency. There's a firm belief that, if it's free, people aren't going to put the time or energy into it, and it's not going to have a perceived value. However, if there is some skin in the game, hopefully their commitment will be a little bit higher. So we are going to entertain any questions as we go through the next process, but also want to turn it back to Chris and let him lead a conversation about the voting.
Yep. Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Sue. Nice job. So yeah, in the chat box, I did put a Mentimeter. So if you could open up a window or grab your phone and go to menti.com, the code is there. In just a second, I'm going to share my screen, but I also encourage you to ask any questions of Mike and Sue and Rick if you have any at this point. At the end of the day, my questions on this Menti are, with that recommendation from the TAP to consider the admin account, the state aid admin account, and as being the steward of those funds, which of course are your funds. We want to get at your commitment level and your interest level, and at the end of the day, do you all feel it's a good use of that admin account? And when we talk about that, we say, is there benefit for a lot of local agencies rather than just a few when we look to use that admin account? So I'm going to hope that you guys got that up now. I'm gonna make a couple clicks here to be able to share my screen. Oh, I already see somebody answered the first one before I got to share and ask the question. That's good. That means it's working. Let me get there. All right. Okay. So the Menti is up. Some of you got it there. It should be sharing now. If you didn't see the code before, now it should be on your screen. So the first question is really, after hearing all of that, what's your level of interest in participating in this guided support and technical support and all that? So we got 4 responses so far. I'm going to hold just for a little bit. I know should be upwards of 10, 11, 12 of you there. And again, anywhere through these series of questions too, if it helps to ask a question of Mike or Sue or Rick, by all means, go ahead. We're up to 9. I'm going to give it about 5 more seconds. Somebody just holler if they're struggling to get it on. 9's pretty good. So I'm going to go to the next question. Okay, so here's an important question too. So we got, you provided that response on your level of interest, but now are you interested in getting started right away? Or would you, I got a question here, you'd like to see others go first, and I just put that option in there for you're just not interested based on the previous question. This is important because it's going to help us establish, if we choose to use the admin account and state aid or MnDOT to kind of lead that contract, is what's that contract size going to be? And then of course that dictates whether we can do our contracting method, whether it's a direct select or we go to RFP or we consider alternatives to using LTAP, CTAP, all that kind of stuff. So those are important answers for us as well. All right, there's 9 again, so that must be the amount, and so that's good. Thanks for participating. Here's the next question. Will you and or your staff be able to commit to the training? This again, just helping with that decision to utilize the admin account. We want to be sure there's a commitment there. Sue did talk about that. The elephant and whether we're, I don't want to call anybody a chicken or a pig, but we got to know if you're the pig here. There's 7 responses, and it's just your best guess today, right? You're just hearing this information. It's just your best guess today. So, all right, cool. Thank you for that. Here's a biggie for me. You know, at the end of the day, do you feel this is a good use of state aid admin funding? Is there benefit to having all counties and cities, or lots of them, go through this process and using similar terminology, thinking about whether it's coming up on the county side through the board and up to local legislators, and or on the city side coming up through their councils and all that, and how's that synergy looking in the future? So pretty good consistent answers there, so that's outstanding. There's number 9. Awesome, thank you. And the last one, getting at a little bit of what Mike was talking about, and the TAP did talk about this as well, as you know, there really probably should be some cost share, some financial investment. There'll be a lot of time investment, but some financial investment on the part of the local agency. And so just looking at what financial investment you think is good on your side, and this will help us how we structure that contract as well. Is it something that is it cap the local commitment, or do we cap the admin commitment? So Sue mentioned, you know, up to 38 personalized hours, but if you need more, you know, that would be probably on the local agency side. But this will just help us how we structure a future contract, if that's where we go with this. Got the 8 responses. This is the last question on this topic. So we're waiting for that 9th one. There's that 9th one. All right, nice job. So that's the last Mentimeter question on this topic. Just don't close the browser yet, because later in my state aid updates, I got a couple more questions. So, all right, thank you very much for providing all that input. I'll turn things back to Mike and to just wrap up. Thanks.
First of all, thanks, Chris, for allowing us the time. Mel, you as well. We appreciate coming out and talking about this. This is the last one, and so we'll probably be meeting with Chris. We have a TAP meeting next week to talk about this and figure out what next steps are. There'll be meetings in the summer, and so I would say in the next couple of months we'll have some direction on which way this might move forward. So once again, really appreciate everyone's time, involvement. If indeed you have questions about this, feel free to reach out to myself, Sue, Chris, Rick. As long as you do it in the next 4 days, he'll be available. After that, you won't see him. So with that, thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue, Mike. Congratulations, Rick.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, it's
Enjoy it.
I'm gonna give it a go. Thanks a lot. Appreciate the time.
I better not see you working for a consultant next year.
I have no idea what the hell I'm gonna do. But I'm gonna enjoy
But there's
it.
actually a true retirement out there.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.
All right, thanks, guys. One thing that I failed to do at the beginning of the meeting is Kim had asked me to move her 2 items below the Title VI update. So with that, Chris and Christine, if you're ready, we can go straight into continuation of what you've talked about and do the central office update.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I can certainly jump in here and finish up. Like my update's been taking about 20 minutes. I will start. I'll jump back to that Mentimeter just so we can finish that up. There's just a couple more questions for you. But Kim had her camera on just for a second. Kim, come on, turn it back on.
They all know me.
I know they do, but okay. So we sent out a note, a couple months back just to let you all know and announce that Kim has been promoted within state aid. That just happened because when Mark Breezy was new, I was new. We took a look at that whole needs section and just for long term, look in that needs area, right? They were kind of siloed. You had the city side and the county side. And we thought, let's try to bring them together a little bit, get them one supervisor, then have a county needs and city needs specialist, and then one person that supports all of them. And I did see that Naomi is on as well, so I'll introduce her in a second. But Kim did interview and was selected to be promoted into that supervisor position for the needs area. And then, so congratulations again, Kim. And then Naomi's here too. She had been a focus on the city side, but she'll be supporting both sides. And then we'll very soon be filling behind Kim with that county needs specialist. So you will get a new person to work with, but Kim will not be leaving you anytime soon. So, okay, I'll shut up now, Kim. That's enough on that one, okay? So, okay, bring that Mentimeter back up. And let me get back to sharing my screen. You're in Teams. Okay, so that was the last one on systems preservation. These next questions will just be on the new look of the monthly e-scene newsletter. So historically that had been sent out quarterly and was in a more of a newsletter type fashion, right? So first question here is it's monthly emails. This is just as much a test of our email system and the listserv and all that. So just want to check, are you getting the emails on the with the new monthly e-scene newsletter? I'll give you wait for a few here. We had 9 responses the last time, so we'll wait there. And if for any reason you're going, what are you even talking about? Well, that means you're probably not getting them, and you need to email me or Todd and let him know that there's a challenge. Okay, 9 out of 9 says you're all getting them. That's fantastic. And so the next question is, do you like getting the newsletter monthly? Do you like the new format? Do you like it that it's just clickable? You click on the topic you're interested in, and then you can read about it. Or do you like that old newsletter? I should say former, not to call it old, the former format. Okay, 7 out of 7 like it. 8 out of 8 like it. Come on, number 9. I know you're still out there. They're deciding if they like it or not. All right, we'll take that as unanimous. All right, okay, there it is. All right, maybe there was just a little delay. All right, thanks for that. That's been pretty unanimous across the state. A lot of people like the new format. There's a couple of people that just said, you know what, I kind of like the old one because I could print it out and put it on my desk or hang it on the wall or something for other staff members to look at. But you can certainly forward this one as well. So, but we're going to look into see if there's any option to have it be dual purpose like that. Okay, and the last one will be one. We're just going to leave this up here while I continue to talk. It's just, are there any topics you'd like to hear more about? What would you like to see in any future upcoming e-scene newsletters, things like that. So this one you actually have to type in your thoughts there. So I'm just going to leave that up, and you can think about that as I roll through the rest of my updates. Okay, I'll just drag this over here. You can follow along a little bit. They're just my notes, but they'll help us cruise through this. So the first update I've been given in general, and it's both on the county side and the municipal side, just finance in general. The city side was much more interesting last year than the county side, and things have smoothed out this year too for them. So if you can think back, May of 2020, we were having a much different conversation in regards to state aid funding and what was the future going to look like, and we were just coming off of stay-at-home orders and major concerns about future revenue. So totally different story this year. Things are sort of returning to normal in traffic patterns and auto sales and all the other revenue there. So and as far as the state aid disbursements, so when you all send in your pay requests and going out, it's right on track, right in historical track with other years. So not really any faster or slower, just on a really good pace. But what I have been telling all the counties is that just over time now, last number of years, I'll say there's a pretty sizable balance in the CASA account. It's about $200 million that's carrying forward each year. And just with some, it had some pretty big growth when, back when gas taxes increased, and then the motor vehicle lease sales tax and all that stuff went into play. So there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's perfectly fine. It's just that after what I heard in previous years when the balances got high, there was some attention from legislators that would say, hey, you're advocating for more money and you got, hundreds of millions of dollars sitting in your accounts. That's just something to think about. And is there, advances are available. The cities can advance up to 5 years. Right now, the counties can only do 1 year. Do we want to entertain a temporary, change to that to allow some additional advances, just stuff like that. So, but that's for you all to think about and just, just talk amongst yourselves and see if we need to do anything there or not. Maybe even bring it to your legislative committee and all that stuff. So, and more on advanced status. I already mentioned it for you guys. Everything is good. Any advance would be approved if you needed it. Last year, if you remember, that was a different story for the cities. We actually had to put them into the code red, which was a restriction, with no further advances. And that really helped them throughout last year, sustain their balance. And so this year we were able to get back to a small advancing program. They're hanging in the code yellow, which means everything is being prioritized. So the district state aid engineers and I meet on a monthly basis, and we review those that have been submitted throughout that month. And things are working out really well there. That's what I got on letter B there. So letter C is the federal COVID relief. And my joke with this is it's as easy to remember, or I guess as difficult to remember what that acronym stands for as it is to get some facts about the how and when the distribution is going to come out. We did send an email update about I suppose it's about a month ago now, that talked about the amounts that you could expect from that. Remember, it was $20 million to go to Greater Min and $20 million to go to Metro local agencies. So that's still true. And the other truth is that we can't distribute it until after July 1st. Now, what's the holdup right now of getting you any more information is we want to be 100% sure what's going to be needed from you. If there's one plan that MnDOT could, what they call claim this money from the feds with what's called revenue loss for the whole amount that was coming to Minnesota. And then if that plan goes through, then it's super easy for you. We're going to be able to pop the money in your account. There might be a form to fill out at the end of the year to document it essentially. But ARP came out. That's the American Recovery Plan, right? A couple billion coming to the state, couple billion coming to counties and all that. And that same revenue loss justification can be used for that. So on the MnDOT side, they're being, they don't want to lose their flexibility on that. So they're saying they've got to wait for some chips to fall in place on that ARP to see how much they can use for revenue loss there. So anyway, it's been quite confusing, and we're continuing to meet with MnDOT upper staff and finance to talk about that. The worst case is, and we're going to try to make these decisions in early to mid-June here, so is we were working on establishing a process that would be very similar to like the force account, right? So you could document some labor, equipment, and materials that adds up to that amount that was submitted to you, sent out, or allow you to apply it to or give you maximum flexibility to put it towards an existing federal project, and whether that's a unauthorized one or whether it's has been authorized. There's even maybe some strategies that if it's already let and you had some shortfall on it, stuff like that. We're getting all that stuff into place for you, but we're waiting to send it out till we're 100% sure. And our commitment to you is just keep you as updated as possible with the information that we get. And my last one there was just if you have to start doing any planning for next year already on a budget. As you may know, your January allocation, so for 2021 is based off a forecast that is done in November, based off of MMB information and all the traffic and revenue projections and all that. And what we're hearing so far is those revenue forecasts have been pretty good, right? They did predict some increases and returning to traffic levels and all of that. So the forecasted amount is in line pretty good with current revenues. Now it's almost June. There's still 7 months left of this year. You got to take that for what it's worth, but it should tell you could look at this year's allocation, and you should be pretty safe with that number. And hopefully it only goes up from there. But we won't know that until the rest of the year plays out. So okay, that was a bunch of stuff on the funding. I'll just pause there and see if there's any questions. And by all means, pop them into the chat as you go here. I can monitor that and just can respond on the fly as well. Okay, I'll jump into the additional updates there. Just staff updates on the state aid side in St. Paul. The first two there, they actually started in December and January respectively, but I just update since the last pre-screening board meeting. So that's Mitch Kicker. He's in the programs unit in state aid, and he's managing all the safe routes to school. So he replaced Sarah Flom, who had moved on to a different role in MnDOT. And then Stephen Lamb came to us from actually another state DOT, and he's working in our federal plans unit, doing plan reviews and working with Angie Murphy on all that. But MnDOT's been pretty tight on filling positions and hiring freeze and that during the pandemic and all that, but things are starting to loosen up. So we actually have a lot of things happening and filling positions that were vacant for a while. So well, number one there, I say a grad engineer. So we actually looked even prior to the pandemic, looked at our future needs, looking at possible retirements of current staff and all that. And so you got to make a decision for a couple of years out on that, because that grad engineer is going to go on MnDOT's rotation program for 2 years and expected to be a permanent state aid employee 2 years from now. So that person started yesterday. His name's Joe. And so he's going to start a couple months here in state aid in St. Paul. We're hoping to get him out to a local agency for an external rotation as well, but then he'll do his rotation inside of MnDOT and come back to us a couple of years from now. The programs one, this is going to be a dedicated person that focuses on the local road and local bridge program. That person will be working for Mark Breezy. The interviews were completed. We have a person selected, and I just haven't seen an external announcement go out yet. So I guess I'm just that should be super soon. And but maybe there's one I to dot or something like that. And so you'll hear about that announcement real soon. Then I mentioned Kim's promotion that opened up a spot in the needs area. So those interviews are happening in early June. So there'll be some information coming on that very soon. The next one is a turnbacks program manager. We've had Bill Meinholtz doing that on a temporary basis during the pandemic here, helping out Mark V. So again, those interviews are complete and super close to having an announcement there as well. So all these are kind of right in line with each other. And the next one's in the same boat. These are bridge inspection liaisons. These are going to be similar to the construction reps, but with the focus of helping local agencies with their bridge inspections. So I first heard about this need at the first county engineer conference I was able to attend back in January of 2020. I sat in on a bridge committee meeting, and they were talking about the challenges with especially when you have turnover at the local agency, and you flat out don't have a lot of staff, and the staff you do have multiple responsibilities. So keeping up to date on all things bridge safety inspection is challenging. And so that's what these 2 employees are going to do. We're going to have one stationed in the north, one more down in the south. Those locations are to be determined based on where these people ultimately live. But that's going to be their focus, is to support you and help you and train your staff and be that prime resource from state aid to help you with all that. So again, interviews are being concluded next week on those. So hopefully by early July, we'll have a couple of people in those positions as well. All right, that's staff updates. My next updates go a little faster. So number 3, 4, and 5 here are stemming from the bonding bill that was passed back in October. So local bridge got 30 million in the bonding bill. Local road improvement was 75 million, and safe routes was 3 million. So local bridge, that's been fully not expended, but all accounted for. Over 100 bridges picked off the waiting list and other areas, and a little bit of money being held over for the Bros projects, and a couple that are slated for 2022 construction, and then that waiting list is building again, and so we're using that information to put in to help supply the request for bonding bills that they're still talking about. And we'll be optimistic something will happen here in the special sessions. On local road, number 75 million, we received 420 applications to the tune of $300 million in local road bonding requests. So that was like a record number of requests of all time. Patty Loken and Mark Breezy reviewed all of those. Took a little longer because there was so many, but I believe they're meeting with the LRIP Advisory Committee today to review all of the criteria and the selection recommendations and all that. So early June, you should be able to expect all the final announcements coming out of that local road improvement program. So that's great news. And then safe routes to school, because of all the other solicitations that were out there and transportation alternatives and things like that, was just agreed to hold off until this year to put that solicitation out. But there'll be $3 million for infrastructure projects coming out in a solicitation here in October. So that is the update on those. County roads safety plans. Hold on one second. I do have a map, if I still have it opened. Seem to have lost it. Well, I don't need the map to give the update. Phase 1 is now complete. There's 14 counties that participated in that. Phase 2, all of the contracts are now in place. There's going to be 17 counties selected for the Phase 2 of the county road safety plans. And so those will be getting underway real soon. And then just know that Phase 3 will follow Phase 2. And in early 2022, we'll to all the other counties that haven't done them so far and see who's interested to move forward in Phase 3. Number 7 is a spec book. So the 2020 spec book is now out. And look at a couple dates there. Maybe you've already read them for your state aid, federal aid projects. You have until February of 2022 to have those in play. But if you are leading a project on a trunk highway or national highway system, just look at that date. That's coming up a heck of a lot quicker. And they need to be used by August 27th of 2021. The number 8 is just talking about, so the AGC reached out to MnDOT leadership to just make them aware that there's possible delays due to COVID and some cost increases. And we've asked at a lot of the pre-screening board meetings already, and not too many agencies have noticed any increases yet, but MnDOT had noticed it in steel. And I don't know if anybody tried to go buy a 2x4, that the cost has gone way up. And I ordered a couch in January, and I still haven't received it. So there are some significant delays out there. But this is really to let you know that if you do come across them, it's certainly an excusable delay where you could offer some more time, but you can't grant any additional funding for those delays or those cost increases. Okay, so the next one here is just on the federal grants. So they're not called Tiger anymore. They're not called Build anymore. They are called Raise grants. And if you're going to be leading one here or submitting a proposal, and note that those applications are due on July 12th. If it's on the trunk highway and you would like a letter of support, you need to reach out to, you can certainly reach out to Nancy Stone in our office, search back for an email from Christine Elwood to talk about the information that you need to send in to get those. I believe there was even a deadline of June 4th on that. So just take note of that. The last two here are real quick. There was a Title VI webinar for counties on May 17th. If you weren't able to attend, it was recorded, and they're going through the process right now of making that, format it properly to be able to put it on the website, and we'll send out the link to where that's available when it's available. And the last one is just a little heads up on a smaller committee that's been meeting. And it's, kind of stemmed from Kitson County and Roseau County struggling to fill their county engineer position. A couple others across the state have, had limited applicants and all that. So just a conversation started about, what what are the options? Is there anything that can be done to increase the candidate pool and things like that? So, but a couple of things that where MnDOT's able to take part and state aid have some influence is just on that grad engineer rotation program that I mentioned before. Those external rotations that I mentioned where this MnDOT grad would go out to either a county or a city for 3, 4, 6 months and really get that good experience. Used to be super popular, but it sounds like it had really tapered off in the last number of years. But we've talked with the program manager and then with the districts and sounds like the district engineers are supportive. And so they'll do some more encouragement of the grads getting out on rotation. But then we also talked about what about more seasoned engineers at MnDOT? Take Kitson or Rosal. Could somebody from District 2 or anywhere really, but had gone out and served as that county engineer for a short period of time, up to a year. There could be some mutual benefit, right? Could be a benefit to that MnDOT employee, help with the relationship between the county and the state, and then obviously help that county out while they got their search on and all that. So those are a couple of things going on, and hopefully some good things will come out of that. They've got a bunch of other ideas too, but more long range types of things. So Mel, that wraps up my update. I can certainly entertain any questions if there's anything out there.
Are there any questions of Chris? You went through a lot.
Mel, John, McLeod County, got a question. Chris, regarding the extra program support for Breezy, what kind of trip that, or why now?
Yeah, that's been on. So Christine might be able to jump in too, but so MnDOT or State Aid did a strategic staffing study, before I had started, and that's those programs, LRIP and Local Bridge, do take a lot of time and effort, and they were like a huge time commitment for one person, for Patty, right, over the years. And when Mark came in and we looked at that, and it's like, wow, that could really use a dedicated person, because that subtracts from Patty's position, Mark's position, able to work with the other programs areas with traffic safety and needs and all that, and it could really benefit from a dedicated person. So that's where that ultimately came from. And then we did take that out to your board of directors, before we proceeded with filling that position, and there was support there.
All right, thanks.
You bet.
So Chris, are you going to in June, are you going to do another maybe summary or are we going to have good minutes? Because you covered a lot of stuff from all the way from the federal backfill of the revenue to positions to advancing to, I don't know, you had I guess maybe this kind of shows that when you don't meet in person, there's a lot of stuff that you might talk about over a campfire that I'll admit some of this stuff, I knew a lot of it, but there's a few things in here that I must have gone right over my head before through emails or whatever. So I guess from my perspective, and maybe other people chime in, but I wouldn't mind if, some of this was maybe reiterated again. So.
Yeah, that's great, Mel. It is a lot of information, and I agree. I think these are, really tough to convey the information really well through the virtual environment. Some of the pre-screening boards have asked for my notes and include those in the minutes to help trigger the memory. I can certainly provide those. But yeah, maybe we could touch base prior to the summer conference and see if is there 2 or 3 of those things that could really be elaborated on. We had a lot, without a summer conference last year, the conference committee gave us, I think it was like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes for state aid / MnDOT topics, and boom, I mean, they filled up like that. So I had to request another 15 minutes just to be able to give some updates like this. So yeah, let's touch base and we'll see I can include this in those 15 minutes to at least get a little more detailed or something like that.
Yeah, and one of the things I know locally here with all this federal COVID money and et cetera, and revenue backfilling and all that. I'm not sure where people are going with that, but I guess I would like to know a little bit on that. So I don't know if that's, you hear that around the other districts, but for me, it seems like that's confusing because you get money and then they use it for other stuff and then they want to backfill it with revenue and I don't know. There's a lot with that.
You're not the only one confused with them both, especially with, you had CARES, then you got Carissa, now you got ARP.
Yep.
Yeah, and we're, Christine and I were just talking about that this morning, and we've been having meetings with, MnDOT finance as well. So we'll bring as much up to date and clarity as we can on the middle of June there.
Okay. Why don't we take 5 minutes and then Kim, do you want to go next or is the Title VI folks ready or where are we at on that?
I'm ready if if no one else wants to go. I don't
Okay,
see, Elisa didn't join, but Mark Vazecki's on.
Okay.
Does he have it? Mark, do you have anything to add?
I do not, and I will actually be logging off in 15 minutes for an overlap on this one.
Okay.
Okay.
But thank you.
Okay.
I need to fill a coffee cup, so I'm going to take 5. So
Okay.
we'll be back. What time is it? It's at 10:20. Why did everybody start waking up?
What are you implying, Mel?
It hasn't been that bad.
And then I thought sometimes that puts people to sleep. I don't know. All right. 5 minutes are up. Are we,
Lisa's gonna join us. I just
you
let her
just-
know that she can
Okay.
pop in.
Okay, so, I'm ready to go with that if Elisa wants to get
I'm-
rolling when she's on.
I'm here now, and now would be a great time because I have to leave at
Perfect.
10:30.
Perfect. Well, then that tells me another thing. You'll be done pretty quick.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
unless there's a lot of questions, but
Well, we just had the training and I'm assuming that you're gonna probably be talking maybe in June or not at the summer conference, or maybe Chris will be given an update, or
if
maybe we won't need one. I don't know.
maybe you won't need one. So I am not planning on speaking in June. Chris can
Okay.
if there's specific questions or any follow-up. There was that training last week for the counties.
Yep.
That was recorded. So we are in the process of adding closed captions to that recording, and then it'll be posted on the Title VI website. Byron is doing another training for the cities. Now it's the same information. It's for the cities. I think that's coming up next week. Let me find a date. Next Thursday afternoon. If anybody wants to tune into that, I can provide a link to that. So that's next Thursday at 1 p.m. Audience is cities, but counties can sure join also. Is there any specific questions that anybody wants? Maybe I should have started off with what's going on with Title VI. So Title VI has been a requirement for a long time for federal aid projects, for the agencies that are doing federal aid projects. Only recently have we started trying to enforce it and then realized that nobody really is in compliance. So now kind of our plan B is to help Byron Malaya from the Office of Civil Rights Title VI coordinator would like to help the counties and cities get into compliance with Title VI. So that's what we've kind of shifted gears to. So that kind of started with the webinar a couple weeks ago for the counties, and we'll continue with more training, dedicated help. He'll be providing forms and documents, templates that cities and counties can use. So that's what's going on with Title VI. So it's not putting any, so non-compliance right now is not putting any federal funds in jeopardy. Just right now we're trying to get everybody into compliance. So is there any specific questions or general questions about that?
I don't, I think, and I'm not sure what your whole update might be, but I think just maybe like, what's the next step? Like, do you have templates? I know that you were going to focus on policies, assurance, and some of those things. But I think maybe just more like a checklist for local governments might be helpful.
Okay.
You know, like, this is where you should start, then go to this step, and then here's some templates. That's maybe where I would see it, so that
Kind of a
people
plan, sure.
have an idea of like what to do first if they're not in compliance. And I think some people might be in more compliance than they might even realize.
Right, yep. Okay, yep, got it. Is there any other questions? There's a lot of information on the Title VI website, and if you have specific questions that I can answer, Byron Malaya is your contact there. And if anybody would like the webinar link, you can let me know for the city presentation next week. You can let me know. I'll send it to you. Otherwise, that's all I have.
All right, well then, why don't we, you'll just be updating the website, and yeah, if you could just say, you know, focus on this, or step 1, step 2.
Yeah, that's a good
would be
idea.
helpful. And then some templates would be good, from what I feel. So.
Okay, thanks, Mel.
You bet. All right, well, thank you. Then Kim, why don't we go to you, and we'll just get into the pre-screening board book.
Okay, you see my screen with the book?
Yep,
Okay.
I got it.
All right. So the books are online. They're kind of changing. So as somebody points out my mistakes, which I miss right now, right? Because in person, the first it was always a contest to see who would be the first one to find the first mistake in the book when we showed up at the meetings. But since Dave Halsbruma has retired, I'm not as nervous anymore because I don't think anyone looks that close. So the purpose of the spring meeting is to go over the unit price study, the unit price costs that are going to be recommended for next year's allocation. That's why we meet in the spring. And usually, typically, the first thing we always have a little discussion about is who's going where. Although I think most of you guys are getting the emails. There is a new Kittson County engineer that started on May 17th. And her name is Andrea Waleski, and she is coming out of the Thief River Falls MnDOT office. So she has already started up in Kittson. Rosso is at this time still vacant to the best of my knowledge. And then down in Waseca, Nathan's official last day is the 31st, and Al has been filling in there, but Jim Kohler, Dennis Luby's assistant, has accepted and starts next week, June 1st in Waseca. And we could send Al over to Nobles County because Steve Schneider is retiring June 30th. And he's sent out notice for a posting to fill in behind him, but that'll be a difficult job down there in Nobles County to fill in behind Steve. And let's see, that's about it. So Rick will be missing Rick West up in Otter Tail, and Kay over in Olmsted is promoted now, and she's taking kind of filling in behind Mike Sheehan, who officially retired last year, and they've appointed Ben Johnson as the county engineer in Olmsted County. So they're kind of slowly transitioning in Olmsted. On the associate side, if anybody has any changes or I've missed someone because I didn't see minutes, please let me know and we'll update it. It's kind of live on our website all the time, in addition to being in the books. But if you do have new associates, they need to go through the approval process first at a BOD meeting and be approved before they are added to our contact list and become part of the email list also. So Mel, you are the voting rep at the screening board, and Sam is the alternate. Does anybody have any issues with attendance? Can you guys be there? I will be setting up a Teams meeting for anyone that can't travel and be in person. So it doesn't sound like I've had any issues right now. Everyone who thought they were going to have a problem has resolved those. So it looks like everyone other than some MnDOT personnel will be able to attend in person. I will be there on Thursday. And FYI, I'm anticipating all in-person meetings in October, and we are working on getting a contract to have the combined screening board this fall in October, the last week of October. So there'll be more information when we are able to find a location and get a contract for that.
Okay, so I will be there, Kim. Sam, are you going to be at the conference?
Maybe Sam left.
Maybe Sam left. Yep.
Okay.
I'm just wondering from our district if you would need teams, but we can figure that out later.
Okay. JB was your rep on the general subcommittee meeting that we met the end of April for the recommendation on the statewide unit cost prices. So JB, you feel free to jump in at any time and correct me if I misspeak. There's the meeting minutes here, and then following in the book is all of the support documentation to support these numbers that they're recommending. So you can see the first thing is your railroad protection, your signs, signals, gates, and then your surfacing on your main line of track. These costs haven't been updated since 2017. This is the first increase in costs that I received from the rail office. You'd think I should be able to get a little better information with my inside track, but I had to beg for it this year. So they have suggested some slight increases to those items and the needs due to COVID. And it also depends on the rail company and who owns what. They all have a little bit different prices. So the general subcommittee is okay with the recommendation based on the increases that the rail office has provided. Next item is traffic signals. So when we started the new needs program back in 2015, one item we added was traffic signals. And we came up with a cost per leg based on a replacement of a whole new system on the CASA and MSAS system. So we didn't have any data when we started, and a cost that got thrown out by the task force was $225,000. And we went with that, and then we tried to justify those costs and increase those costs, and we haven't been able to come up with justification for an increase. So we've been at the 225,000 since 2015 up until this year. One way we said we would get our costs is by using what the MSAS system uses, because all of the city system has signals on it, and they do a unit cost every 3 years. And the signal costs are done by the traffic safety engineer in our office, who our first one was done by Mark Vizecki the first year. And then the next time it came around, GERMA was in that position. So GERMA followed Mark's process, and now we have Mitch Kicker, who has taken that role. So Mitch has done it now following GERMA and Mark's process. And they pulled abstracts and looked at projects and tried to come up with an average cost and narrowed it down. He does have a big study, which I forgot to put in the book, but I will add some more information before the screening board. The MSAS system is going to go with his recommendation of $231,874, which for them is up because they were at $211,000 per system the previous year. But the county guys said, hey, what about our controllers and cabinets that are county supplied material? They're not showing up in those bids that Mitch looked at, and those are a substantial cost. And we're providing those. So instead of going with the full 20 to 25,000, that is the typical cost, they upped it by 15. So the recommendation is 245 for a new system. Divide that by 4 to get your costs per leg, and we're going from 56,250 to 61,250. So that's a little bit more of an increase, but it's been again the same since 2015. The next costs are the bridges and the culverts. You guys get the reports from the bridge office that Steve Brown does every year. He usually, Dave or Steve sends them out by email, end of January, beginning of February. We're using a 5-year average cost on these, the bridges and the culverts. So you can see, you could go back and look at what is included, but I've kicked out some of those projects that Steve provided, like the bridge rehabs, the ped bridges, the railroad bridges. Those aren't part of our replacement of a county bridge. So after we average out 5 years, dropping off the 2015 and adding the 2020 projects, there's a slight increase on the shorter bridges from 169 to 173. And on the longer bridges over 150 feet, there was 2 projects that got added in 2020. If I scroll down to that page, we added 2 projects, one at 182 and one at 62, which drops that average to 122. And when we knocked off 2015, we took off 3 projects that had an average cost of 150. So instead of dropping way down, the recommendation from the general subcommittee is to just leave it where it was at 141 from last year. And next year we'll probably see, maybe we'll have a better sample in different projects that'll bring that cost up. But instead of jumping up and down from year to year, just because there aren't enough projects, the recommendation is leave those where they're at. And then culverts, again, Steve Brown sees those abstracts and has put together a report. This is his 5th year doing that. So we're using all of Steve's data, a slight jump in the cost on the culverts. We dropped the 15 and we had the 20 projects. So we're adding 95 projects that had an average cost of 1920. When you put within the 5 years, we got 1801. So you can see here the number of projects and the average cost for the last 5 from Steve. I don't kick these out because there's a pretty good number. So we're capturing and catching all of those odd box culverts that happen all over the state where there's multiple lines, different sizes. So Steve's entire report is included in coming up with this cost. And it's a volume cost, right? It's a cubic foot because there's different sizes, different size pipes in a lot of your culverts out there. Next statewide cost is gravel. So you have roads still on your SAS system with ADT less than 150, and there's still gravel surface roads. Those roads for preservation are drawing a cost for gravel resurfacing on a 2-year cycle. But we're not seeing any state aid bids for gravel anymore, because why would you do a state aid project to gravel a road? A lot of you guys have submitted and shared your county costs or your county contracts for your gravel material, and then you use your own forces to go out there and put that gravel down. So after discussion and a look at the data, we've been at 1001 for the last 2 years. When we plugged in the new projects, we're still at $9.99 based on the bids, but there's such a variation in those depending on location and supply and what is or isn't included, that after the task force general subcommittee talked about it, and we had a couple emails from counties talking about what their real cost is after they place it. 1075 was the cost that they came up with for 2021. So those are your recommended unit prices for next year's allocation. This is what the screening board would then vote on. At this time, yeah, go ahead.
Is there any comments from our district on concerns or that I would need to vote on anything other than what you see?
I think it looks great, Mel, but I'm kind of biased.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Okay, so,
thumbs
all
up.
right. There's a couple other things that were discussed. One of them being roundabouts. You know, there's been every year someone brings up, what about roundabouts? How are we counting for roundabouts? Currently, the roundabout is paved. It's a paved road right now. So the mileage of your roundabout is included in your total mileage, which means you're drawing construction needs and preservation and lane mileage on that roundabout. If you have a reconstruction project with a roundabout in it, the full cost of that roundabout becomes part of your construction cost per mile. That goes in on your road projects and is averaged out, and your cost is then applied to all miles in that traffic category, and your roundabout cost is part of it. The problem in the complaint has been, well, I just did a roundabout project, which is an intersection improvement. Like, we don't treat intersection improvements when we just replace a signal as a road project. So those costs are they're not being accounted for the counties that can't include a roundabout in a larger project. And they want some sort of compensation for building roundabouts. So one discussion One of the suggestions we had was let's just add a roundabout like we do a leg or a signal and give that extra cost for the roundabout. In order to not double dip, we'd have to take that cost out of that segment for 5 years until that construction project, though, drops off. So you're not getting those needs twice because your construction project remains in your cost per mile for 5 years, but your roundabout and your leg would stay there, you know, forever or until you remove it. So that's one suggestion, because if we started to look at separating the roundabout, that means you guys would have to separate out all your costs and quantities associated with the roundabout from your road project. And I have a hard enough time just getting your road project costs in there. And if we're going to ask you to start separating out, you know, your grading and your quantities and your gravel and your bit and everything else and your right-of-way costs just associated with the roundabout, that creates a whole lot more complexity and makes things harder and not simpler. So if we added it like a leg and we took out an amount that was deemed fair and representative, so we're not double dipping, what this does is it gives a little bit extra for those roundabouts, but it treats it kind of like we do concrete overlays versus bituminous costs, right? We have bit as our proxy for preservation. And John has to use a bit cost, even though he's got all white roads in McLeod County. That's just something we've all accepted and concrete has to live with. So there's a stipend, but it's kind of a proxy to say we recognize it as an added cost. It's not perfect, it's not exact, but you're at least getting something for a roundabout. And if we did that, we probably would not have to look at doing a rewrite of the application, which of course would take more time and more money too. But you know, one of the goals when we changed the needs was to make things simpler and easier and not complicate things. And we also didn't want to start changing the whole system piece by piece and altering it from what its original, the original goal was. So if anyone has any suggestions or comments, concerns, you want to talk later or in the group at the screening board, feel free to bring them up, because no idea is a bad idea. And everyone, I mean, the more that we know and the more we have to look at, it makes bringing information to the group easier. But it, you know, we want to, again, keep it simple, but include that. Anybody have anything they want to share or any concerns now? You can always contact me later also.
Well, I can see that with the cost of doing a roundabout, that, you know, that it would be similar to a signal, if you will, for cost. But it also might, the confusion, I don't know. I think it needs to be addressed somewhere because they're expensive to build and they're very effective. Long-term, cheaper than a signal.
Okay. The other thing that was brought up is to start thinking about the shift in transportation planning and how some of these bigger, large scale projects are going to affect the CSA system. So we're talking BRT lanes, bike lanes, reducing the number of traffic lanes to accommodate the bike lanes in the BRT, or continuous turn lanes down the middle of the street for safety concerns. This was brought up at the Metro from the Metro guys, and they just said that we need to start having the discussion of how the CSA needs should react, or how this is going to impact the CSA system. Of course, there's lots of different opinions on this, but when we meet together at the screening board, sometimes issues and topics get brought up, and I just don't see a whole lot of participation from the districts in these conversations. So I want to make sure that you guys know what could be coming down the line and think about it and be prepared to participate and share your thoughts when these topics come up so that you're represented. Right now, I can tell you that the counties that are reducing the number of traffic lanes because they are adding a bike lane or they're putting a continuous turn lane down the middle of the road, they're going from 4 traffic lanes to 2. Now they're losing lane mileage because you don't have the through traffic lane, which is open to all modes of traffic. But they are also saying that they're not losing, their ADT is not dropping on those roads. So they're still high volume, high cost roads, and they're going to draw the cost per need based on their traffic volume. So even though their lanes are less, if their traffic is still up there, they're still drawing the higher cost, the higher cost per mile for their construction needs. I have not seen a BRT lane built as part of a new road. It's been a reconditioning project, and the reconditioning projects are not included in your road cost. So therefore, those costs have really not been added to the needs, nor has the lanes been included because a BRT excludes all modes of traffic. So it's a heavy shoulder for buses. It doesn't allow for all modes all the time to be using that lane. So I would expect there to be some conversation, some suggestions from others as to the fact that these are higher costs on our CASA system, and we should be aware of that and figure out ways to, of course, reimburse or financially support that. Any questions?
Hey, Kim, this is Jeff.
Yeah. Yep.
So are these bike and ped projects, are those construction items all eligible for state aid funds? Or
So
are they using different programs for those?
yes and yes. You can use, if it's within your right of way, you can definitely use your state aid funds for it. If you're building a trail, a bike lane, or a bike path, at the same time you're constructing the road, those costs are included in your cost per mile. But if you're doing a separate project just for the bike lane or the bike or the path or the trail, that's not a road construction. So we're not adding any cost to anything for those standalone projects, right? Just like an intersection improvement or a roundabout only. You can spend your money, but there's also funds available for the metropolitan area to do those projects also. So it's not 100% on, it's not, their state aid account is not 100% funding those types of projects either.
All right, thank you.
Hmm?
This is Sam.
Yep.
State aid funds are gas tax, motor vehicle sales tax, and so forth. And if you're turning around and building a lane for bicycles and peds, things that don't pay any of those taxes, that's your choice. But why do we want to share our funding to do that when our funding is for vehicle traffic? I'm missing something there.
Yep, and that is the definition, right? That's the way the statute is written. Although, I mean, they're being forced upon and pushed upon your CASA system, and you have maintenance for that. But again, it's your conversation to have. All of your opinions and concerns should be heard. So just make sure when the subject comes up amongst yourselves that you guys contribute to that conversation. I know it's hard in these type of meetings. I can't see eyes, but in the past at screening board meetings, when I'm sitting, opposite the screening board and things come up, all of a sudden I don't see eyes, or I see eyes that look like deer in the headlights. And I can't say anything at the screening board. I can't offer my opinion. I'm not telling anyone what to say or bringing it up. So I just at the district meetings, I just try and make sure you guys are aware. You think about it, you have a conversation, talk about it, and that if issues and these kind of conversations come up, you're ready for it. I don't want to see those deer in the headlights.
Okay,
Lanes, are the parking lanes, are they different from bike lanes and traffic lanes?
Yeah, if a parking lane is a shoulder, right? So if that's how you striped your road and we can only count the through traffic lanes in both directions as for your lane mileage. That's like in the old needs when you said your road was so wide, you were getting needs based on the width. You can go out and change your paint and your striping, one day to the next, and add more traffic lanes and allow cars to drive where you had parking or shoulders. So what's reported in the needs is what exists on the road today. If you've got it striped for bikes only or for parking, that's not a traffic lane.
Kim, do you
your
think,
state. All right, good.
sorry, do you think there'll be some proposals brought up at screening board by a group, or just discussion at this point?
Maybe just discussion at this point. Maybe just let's start talking about it. Maybe the talk starts someplace else until someone has an offered solution. I don't know. But if that's what is being talked about, you don't know when it's going to come up. So that's why I just want you guys to know that that's what I heard. This could come up. Be prepared.
Okay. Well, it's good. It's good to know. So basically they're restriping and reducing lanes and making them
Right.
bike lanes, but they want the old needs to not be reflected in any reduction is basically what you're saying, right?
Right. Or they're trying to find an adjustment to build in, right? If I'm losing a traffic lane, a lane mileage, I'm losing money. How am I going to make up for this? I still have to maintain, I still have to support, I still have to build, but that is not right. Bike lanes, BRT lanes, they're not part of the definition of what the needs is designed and created for. Yes, you can spend your state aid funds. Yes, you can spend your wheelage tax. Yes, you can spend your local funds. Yes, you can spend a number of other funding sources also. So it's not their only option is CASA funds.
Right. So they're getting tugged to do more other mobility options, and then they're not seeing the flexibility on the funding side to accommodate it.
Right, right. And it's not just the metro counties. I'm sure there are other metro areas in other outstate counties that are seeing this push also. The Rochester area and St. Cloud and Duluth. Anyone else before we move on?
Nope.
Okay. There are no mileage requests. We've asked that if anyone has a mileage request, they come to the fall meeting. I haven't heard of anyone coming with one this year, so I don't expect another mileage request this coming fall. But August 1st is the deadline, so it could pop up. I just don't know about it yet. We track them. We treat mileage requests mileage like we do trunk highway turnback, meaning that if you have a route approved by the screening board for added mileage. You can't revoke that, bank it, and put it somewhere else on your system. Here's the criteria for a CASA. And if you are thinking of making changes, I suggest you call Todd or myself before you go to your board and start writing county board resolutions, just to make sure everyone's in agreement and we know what's going on early rather than too late. Banked mileage. This was original mileage that was on the system for each county that over time, because of revocations, construction, or whatever has happened, it was removed and thrown in this bank so that you can use that mileage later when you find the appropriate place to put that mile back on the system. So what is sitting in this bank, these 60 miles are not drawing any needs or lane miles. They're just waiting to be used sometime in the future. I try and help the counties make sure they minimize the impact of banking miles so that if you're going to do some revocation, let's do the timing so that you revoke and designate as close, so you're not losing from one year to the next, but sometimes that's unavoidable. Just show the history as mileage has been added to the system, and then any special mileage request is added in the book also so that the counties know that we're tracking those requests as they were requested and approved by the screening board until the counties can complete them. You can see that there's been mileage requests that, back to 2005. It takes a long time to complete and put everything on and make all the changes. It doesn't happen, in 1 year for the majority of those counties that do get a larger request. So as they complete them, then this page falls out of the book. The rest of the book is pretty basic and standard. It's what we show every single time. State Park Road. I haven't seen a request that requires screening board action, meaning if you're looking to use State Park Road funds on a CSA, the screening board needs to give approval before you can actually get the money. Most of the time, you guys are going ahead and requesting approval for the projects and the DNR selects it, but then the DNR waits to say that the funds can be released until screening board does approve. Also, the screening board may approve a project that the DNR may not select. So just because the screening board says, sure, you can spend state park roads on your CASA projects, doesn't guarantee selection. There's a statute that says it's required, so we do that. Mao Yang is the state aid contact in our office that if you are looking for some assistance and need help, there's a page that Mao has on our website with the information, and then it'll also take you here right to the DNR website for more information. If anyone has a project that they'd like to get approved before the screening board meeting on June 17th, if they send it in, I will add it to the agenda and bring it to the screening board. So you have up until June 16th to submit a project if you are thinking about it. Chris talked about advances. We also have the process for maintenance facilities. The advanced process is here. It's also on the State Aid Finance website. One thing I don't know if you mentioned it or not was the possibility of, you can only advance 1 year and the county balance is pretty healthy. Maybe it's time to have the discussion about being able to advance more. Especially if we are leaving those large balances and the auditor and the legislature does look at what that balance is, we try to make sure that we try to penalize some counties for having a large balance and deduct needs. But for the majority of those counties doing that at this time, it's only so that they can do a larger project that takes several years of allocations to build so they can build it. So we have tools to not penalize for that also. But that doesn't eliminate the balance in the account when the auditors are looking. We'll ask that the screening board approve the minutes from last fall's meeting. At the beginning of the June meeting, we'll ask for a nomination of a vice chair, and And that is about it for action needed in the spring screening board meeting. But the other topic I wanted to talk about is traffic. Last year, we tried to encourage everybody to do counts if they could, because there was hesitancy about counting because everyone knew the counts were down. What is that going to do? If my counts are down, it's going to affect my needs. I'm going to take a hit. And last year, when we were encouraging counts, we said we're not necessarily going to have to use those against you in needs, but there's other reasons to have the data. I actually spoke with Christy Prentice this morning, and after getting those counts and seeing those numbers, she said that the traffic office will not use 2020 data for any of their forecasting out in the future. So although it's important to show the impact and to know the changes, MnDOT will not be using those numbers from 2020 for any other reason other than to report to the feds and to the state on what the effect of the pandemic has been. You are the last meeting, so I've heard just about everyone I've actually heard from. There's a couple counties that said, I'd like to use my 2020 counts. And then the Metro district is going to ask for 2020 counts to be discarded, and we ignore them and don't use 2020 counts, which I think that's an option. And it's not my decision to make. It is your decision to tell me how you want me to handle it. If a county so chooses to use 2020 counts, they have to use all of them. They can't pick and choose. The few counts that actually went up, they're also going to have to use their counts that went down. In District 8, there were 4 counties scheduled to be counted in 2020: Chippewa, Lacaparo, Lincoln, and Pipestone. And I think one of those counties actually didn't even have one count. But even of those that did have counts, the counts were so few, it's not really valid data. So there were, Chippewa had 7 sites that were counted, and Lacaparo had 5. I was going to bring up and share that screen. You can just see the spreadsheet. Maybe. No, maybe not. There it is. So this is, you see the spreadsheet. Here's a sample of just some counts that were taken in District 8 from those couple counties. And you can see the change percentage. Some of them are drastically one way or the other, but there's so few counts. There's just not a whole lot of data there.
It hasn't shown up on our online.
You're not seeing it?
Not me anyway. I don't know about others.
I
There
see
it is.
Kim.
I got it.
Okay. Sometimes there's a delay. It just takes a little bit of time. So here's the statement that I got from Christy as far as counting goes, because they're behind and the district counters have, their priority when they count is to get the counts from MnDOT that's required to be reported to the feds. So they've created more flexibility in their schedule. And this is what Christy said, that the carryover cycle for all agencies as of 2020 is so that CASAs can count within a window between 2020 and 23, and then start it over again in 2024, meaning counties that count their own roads can submit data as often as they choose during that 4-year window. And the data across multiple years could be updated in a single year or the year that they report it. So you don't have the metro area, the cities and the counties do their own counts and they report them. You guys are at the mercy of the district counters. The counties that are counted by MnDOT counting. Oh no. Am I still on?
You were gone.
I was. I know. I'm getting bumped.
Welcome back.
Thank you. But what they're saying is their priority in 2021 is going to be to do MnDOT ramps and class counts. They'll get to you if they have time. So if you haven't heard from or talked to, if you're on the schedule for 2021, like McLeod and Murray County and Yellow Med, you need to have that conversation before they start counting and tell them what your priority is if you want counts on your local system. Otherwise, it could be, yes, another 4 years before you get counted. But they're also saying that they may have time in 2022 and 2023 to come back and do more counts. So it's just been stressful on resources and personnel, but the traffic forecasting office is just has to have a little bit more flexibility right now to get everything that's required. Pandemic isn't something that could have been predicted, and it shouldn't penalize and people shouldn't be hurt because of it. But we do know too that in some places, in some areas, counts may never really come back to what they were. So we'll have a new normal. But it's your decision on how you want those counts applied to needs. I'm not telling you how it has to be done. I want Screening Board to tell me what you want me to do.
I had a question about the traffic counts.
Mm-hmm.
Ours are done by district staff. Is that, so they're gonna be focused on just the trunk highways in our area, or is there, Todd, have you heard on that end of it?
No, I haven't heard anything about that.
Might be good to talk to Randy and then you can get us an update, just what they're thinking.
So remind me again, is the district, how often does every county get counted in our district?
Every 4 years. You're on a 4-year cycle. So Candy Ojai, you should be counted in 2022. But right now, because of 2020, you may not get counted to 2023, but that's their goal. So anyone in the 2020 to 2023 cycle, they're going to try and get someplace in that 4-year cycle. It may not be the exact cycle that you've been on. So just because 2020 counts, they didn't get them, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to come back and get them in 2021. Not all the 2021 counts will be done, but they're going to try and catch up and make up for it in 22 and 23. You guys can count your own. So if you have areas that you want counted and you want those numbers recorded, you can use district equipment. Todd should have, and if he doesn't, we'll figure out and find out where it is, but there should be counters for your use. And the TDA office will accept that if you send that in. But yeah, I personally don't think it's fair to make somebody use data that we know is not represented in any way. You wouldn't use that for your design. MnDOT's already said they're not going to use it for forecasting. I don't think it's fair to penalize anyone on the needs side either, just because they have the data. But there are counties who are adamant about the fact that they don't think they took a hit. They're okay with what their counts are and they want to use it. And in that case, I think it's fine. You probably have a lot of roads around lakes and public access points that went up a lot, but you're going to have to use everything that was counted in that year. You can't just say, I want the ones that went up. You're going to have to take the ones that went down also. Any other thoughts from anybody? Todd, I maybe you do want to connect with the district traffic counting section and find out where they're at and what their schedule is, and find out what their time looks like for doing local counts. But coming out of the CO, office, they said their focus was on ramp counts and classification. And then after that, they'll see what they can do for local counts.
Yep, I'll do that because I don't think we have that many ramps in District 8 that we were worried about. And I know we did staff all of our traffic areas through the time period. So I know they were out there working and stuff for that. So I don't think we had much of an impact out here.
Okay. Well,
Other
I
than
mean, just
Randy is retiring.
looking at the data that was submitted for 2020, you have very little. So I do hope that 2021 would be a little bit more closer to what we're looking for, but 2020 data as it stands is pretty off the wall.
And I believe the cities are going in the direction of not incorporating these numbers because of that plus and minus of that, and just the idea that sometimes those roads were just moving the traffic from one area to the other when they built new roads and stuff in there where they were for counting.
Right. I mean, if you saw 100% increase because your road was used as a detour, well, that's not typical traffic. That should be used for needs, for forecasting, for design, for anything. Okay, I think I've said it the others too that it isn't my decision. It's not for state aid to say what has to be done or not done. It's up to the counties to give direction. If you don't, I guess we'll have to use, if you don't give any direction at all, we'll have to use what's there because that's the process without more direction. But we can also wait till the fall. There's not a whole lot of data. So if there's more discussion to be had and people want to look and see too what's going to happen with 2021 data, there will be a motion, I know, by the Metro District to say 2020 and 2021 data should be just disregarded and not used. We'll start back with 2022 counts.
Hey, Kim, this is Randy. Do you know what the schedule is by chance? Maybe you don't have that data, but it seems like Murray was supposed to be counted and
This year.
due to COVID.
This year.
It is this year?
You're this year. Yep. You would be getting counted this year.
All right. Well, good enough. So they'll reach out to us, I assume.
I hope.
Okay.
If not, reach out to them.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, generally we have to send the guy along with,
Right.
So.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mel.
All right, well, we will duly note the traffic issue. I'm not sure monetarily what that's gonna do, skip or not skip, but we'll see how discussion goes at screening board. But if anybody has any concerns after this meeting, just let me know. And I can relay those. Todd, are you ready for District 8 DSAE?
Yep, that sounds good. Okay, just a few quick ones here. When we talk about the local road improvement program, the LRIP program that Chris mentioned about the number of interested parties we have, just going to mention that they're producing a new pamphlet about the grant process and also addresses a little bit of the bridge grant money too. So trying to get that a little better communicated about the steps on that with the agreements and stuff in that process. So there's a new pamphlet being produced for that, that I know I've looked at a draft of it. And some of what I've sent to you guys in the past was being used to create some of that. And it's based upon the DCP process of you do this, then MnDOT does this, and the next step, and you kind of go back and forth on that so you can see the whole big picture of when you get the grants and when you apply the grants and, before award, after award, and all that process through there. So they are trying to produce something that's going to be on the website here that can help facilitate that discussion. It isn't as detailed probably as some of the discussions that we've had, especially when you guys are sponsors to some and making sure those things are there. Still, that's out there in the frequently asked questions things on the website. But you always can chat with me and we can kind of show you the details and examples. So that is being developed. So we'll wait and see. You expect it probably in the next month, I would think, from the review that I've seen. As for new staff assignments for MnDOT in the district, we have Ron Mortensen has retired and he's still working a little bit with Pro with us right now. And he serves as the LPP coordinator local and the cooperative agreements engineer for the district. That position has been filled with Phil DeShepper, who'll be moving over, and Ron will be helping him for the next few months on transition to those things. So you'll see Phil getting involved with the LPP projects and any cooperative agreements actually that the district does will be going through Phil. So you'll kind of get to see that process too, even on MnDOT trunk highway projects. The other one is we have a new district traffic engineer, Cody Brand, who used to be our soils engineer, has accepted that position, and John Hager has retired. So he'll be filling in for John, and that should be happening here. It's been announced, and I think Cody's going to be starting the next week or so, and starting on that transition there. Just a quick mention about the cities. The city engineer for Wilmer, Sean Christensen, he has decided to submit his resignation. He's returning to Wyoming, and his last day is June 1st. So that position is open and posted by the city of Wilmer. We'll be looking at how they'll be dealing with their interim right now. Actually, council's having those discussions right now, but the position is posted if anybody has people that are interested in that city engineering position. And then I'm just going to mention that the TED program is going to be revised, and I think there's some additional funding, and they might be changing some of the caps. I'm not sure about the deed portion of that, because otherwise the TED program, the trunk highway funds that are put into the TED program all follow the cost participation policy, which is about trunk highway eligible activities only. The deed program is funds from deed, which allow you to go outside the trunk highway right away with those funds, but they need to match up the funding. So just something to be aware of, that you should see something coming out, I would expect shortly, talking about those programs a little bit more. With that, that kind of concludes it. Now I'll just ask Bill if he has anything he'd like to share.
No, but I have nothing at this time, Todd.
Any questions?
No, but there's so many grant applications and Raise and Build and Teddy and Ted and ARP, and hope you're got all this down somewhere.
Yeah, I know that's what we keep looking at, and I keep looking in my head, kind of going through all the typical questions and remember which program funds what and who's eligible for engineering, what isn't eligible for engineering, how the items are identified and all the exceptions. So it is getting complicated. We're getting, like they said, more and more programs, more state programs, small cities, all of that process is out there, and it appears that's still something the legislature is very interested in. So they might be expanding that programs. So it will help us to kind of keep our picture, the big picture of all the different programs, what they can be used for.
You know, one thing that state aid might want to think about, we just listed 5 more so we're in the mid-30s with under 5 years of experience in county engineering. There might be, maybe this has been the way it's been for many years, but I don't know, there's some basic guidelines maybe that needs to be polished off and sent out.
Mel, you broke up for a minute there. What did you start that with?
Well, we listed 5 new engineers in the last month. or will be. And since I've been doing the historian stuff, we've had 29 new county engineers in the last 4 or 5 years. So we're in the mid 30s of new county engineers. I don't know if, there's so many things that are basic or new, or from needs to traffic to, I don't know. There just seems like maybe we need to have a refresher on some basic elements of county engineering again. I know there was a pamphlet.
The other thing that I think would be good for a refresher, or not a refresher, but an update or the guidance. I mean, this MMB seems to be every other minute we hear more MMB guidance this, MMB that, and just show us the whole playbook and what, it seemed like the earlier grants, although they were 50,000 pages, Patty had a template that we could fill out and it was blessed and it went through, and now MMB, we hear, like I just said, so it'd be good to hear that too. Maybe that's part of summer conference update from Christine or Chris, I guess.
Yeah, and I seen Christine's got her hand up. Did you have something, Christine?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Great thoughts. You're right. Even as I looked at coming into state aid, I looked at, those that were eligible for retirement. And it was in that next 5 years, like 30% of transition of county engineers. And we're seeing that. So we are doing some things to develop more succinct, plain language guidance. We're also looking at the state aid manual and trying to get that with some better language and guidance. So if you have specific things that you think we need to work on, we can do that. The other thing that Todd Broadwell talked about was the LRIP guidance and agreements and drafts, and something that's easier understood and is a good resource. So we're working on those types of things, but if you have specific things you think we should be working on or updating or looking at, we're doing that too, because we've got a lot of new people in transition and state aid. And so we've got fresh eyes and people that don't have the experience that can look at some of these documents and do a good job of trying to revive those and show the path to, what you need to do to get some of these programs and projects through. And we can, yes, John, help with Minnesota management and budget and their role that they play, but essentially there's oversight agency for all the funding that comes through MnDOT on anything related to bonding, and so we can help with that too.
Thanks, Christine.
You bet.
All right, well, we go to committee reports and round robin. In our county, Gary Danielson's funeral was May 7th. Longtime county engineer here. Those that may not have known, he passed away. And so I'm going to be updating. I was going to do it quarterly, but I think I need to do at least 6 months. But anybody on this meeting, I'd like to get any updates that you have from former county engineers or whatever, just to make sure we track for the memorial book, if you will, for MCEA, anything that happens to any former county engineers, et cetera. So just let me know after the meeting or email or whatever, but I do track all this stuff, and I just help, like when the proclamations come out, they go to me now for years of service in various counties and total years of service. So it is good to just keep it up. So if anybody, but it takes a lot. There's a lot of movement going on. So probably nothing new, but it's just kind of shocking actually. So if anybody's got anything, that'd be great. So on the other committee reports, just speak up.
And Mel, you have Dennis Steckman recently, not recently, but he passed away this past year, right?
Yep, that was one that you had sent out here like 3-4 months ago.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, I got him.
And then I just want to remind everybody, if you don't have it on your calendar, the rare event is September 16th. So we're still planning on that full force. So thoughts on that or anything, let us know, I guess. I thought we'd hook up with Anthony maybe and have our meeting at the Redwood shop, and we could get a tour or whatever, see their newer facility, and then move over to the golf course for the afternoon festivities.
That'd be good. It might be a little less chaotic.
Yep, I agree.
Any round robin?
Mel, this is Sam. So we just had an oversized overweight permit meeting or committee meeting yesterday, and they brought up making some recommendations to change legislation. Some of them were just kind of house cleaning. Some of them were to kind of match up state with some federal definitions and so forth. But the one that they brought up that will be discussed at board of directors at some point, but I think everybody needs to be aware of is they talked about changing the spring load restrictions on unpaved roads from 5 ton to 7 ton because there's so many things that have been given exemptions to 7 tons, such as school buses, garbage collection, sewer, milk, on and on and on. So I think, for our district, where we've got a lot of gravel roads and a lot of traffic in the spring for agriculture, that's something you want to share with what your thoughts are to the board of directors in any way. So when that comes up, they can discuss it and get our input.
Okay. You're not putting bike lanes on those roads?
I don't think so, but if we do, we'll keep the weight restriction down below 350 pounds, I think.
Okay. It is kind of interesting that you go from having bike lane issues to our gravel road issues, so.
Yep, different world, same state, different world.
That doesn't mean bike rapid transit. I was mistaken then.
Any other committee reports? I don't have a list of the committees that we're on in front of me, but. All right, well, let's do round robin. I'm just gonna go down the list I have in front of me. So Murray County, anything, Randy?
Yeah, I was just brainstorming here. Are you guys planning a district meeting in June up at Arrowwood?
I wasn't going to.
Yeah.
No,
I'm not sure. I don't think I'm coming, but is there going to be quite a few counties going? Hard to say.
When they did the poll, I think it was in the mid-40s.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that too from here who was going. I plan to go.
I plan to go.
I'm going.
I'm going.
That's great.
I'm going.
I remember a time when I was the only one that went from our district. Great.
If you're pressure now, Randy, you got to get up there.
Yeah, for sure. I may. Thank you.
McLeod, John.
Yep.
Any round
Oh,
robin?
sorry. No, nope, nothing.
Okay, Yellow Medicine.
I will say this. We hired, I'm going to thank MnDOT. We hired, our senior tech recently resigned for another job, and our 2 new techs are very new and green. And long story short, we were able to hire Erika Kudron from MnDOT. She's out of the Marshall office. She's like their ace inspector. So she is, we got a work order approved with our master partnership, and she's helping out our staff already for our concrete overlay projects, and she's a great resource. So no, nobody else can hire her if we need her.
Okay.
My condolences to your contractors.
Exactly. Yeah, she is unbelievable. Yep.
And your HR staff.
So they're out of the loop. So yeah, if you don't know Erica, she is a great inspector, and better yet, she is a great mentor for these guys. So it's good.
Yellow medicine. Anything, Andy? You what? What about Lion?
No, not really. So meeting at summer conference in June, but probably won't have a district meeting. But what's the next meeting? Does it go all the way to the Rare in September?
I think it does.
And then is MnDOT back to in-person meetings after June, or what's the plan there?
Todd?
I'm gonna say, Christine, I don't believe we will be. We'll know later more, but Christine, do you know if they've had any more discussions about that time period? Otherwise, they're talking in the district that we will be transitioning sometime during the summer to September, somewhere in that time period. So, but we have to remain flexible because we're waiting to see how everything progresses, but it's progressing more quickly right now.
We are transitioning, yeah, beginning early July. I would say if there's in-person meetings that, you need Todd or any of us there, let us know. We'll make it happen.
Good.
Look forward to it.
All right, Renville.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything here that's new to report on. Looking forward to getting back to in-person meetings here soon.
Okay, I have nothing other than my historian report. So Lacaparo.
Nope, I've got nothing.
Okay, Lincoln.
I really don't have much either. Just be good to sit down with some of you guys sometime and pick your brains on the monarch butterfly issues. See what everybody's plans are and see what you guys are considering. But that's about all that I have. Thanks.
I saw two of them fly by me the other day and I almost stopped.
We should look at a meeting maybe for July, huh? Get together somewhere.
It might be good, actually. Yeah, just maybe we should talk up in June at the conference here in a few weeks and just get together and talk about all this. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff happening. Seems like.
Yeah, there'll be enough of us there. We can have a little.
Yeah, we could.
Discussion. I'm gonna say powwow. I can't say powwow anymore, though. I was told by my HR director.
All right, Pipestone.
Nothing here.
Okay, Meeker.
I don't have anything interesting to share.
Okay, well, you can share it if it's not.
That's okay.
Redwood. Oh, wait, maybe not. Anthony wasn't going to be on. Was there any, but did anybody else join from Redwood? And then Chippewa.
Nothing here.
All right. Well, does anybody have any last?
Did Chris get some good thoughts on the newsletter topics?
You know, I didn't submit any, but it might be worth talking about. You know, there are revolving things that person needs to be reminded of in the newsletter. And the thought that I had is maybe in the fall or something, just updates on like if you're doing bike lanes or bike trails or applying for all these grants, maybe there's a cyclical timing that we could just do reminders of how to apply so that, it's just throw out in the newsletter. So you're not, you don't always have to go to the website, or they could just provide a link in the newsletter, like seasonal things is what.
Just make an annual timeline with like a graphic. You could throw some stuff on a big calendar timeline. That'd be
Yeah,
good.
that's what I was wondering. And then the other thing that might be good, and I'm just throwing this out there, but we have the MCEA timelines, and then there's all these other conferences, maybe the calendar of all the conferences. 'Cause sometimes it's hard to find one place to look to find all that stuff. And do that. It's just seasonal stuff, reoccurring things that's the same every year, but throw them on. But all right, well, thanks everybody. And Sam, you're doing the minutes, right?
I do.
There you go. And this was recorded in case you need to.
Right, I'll share that.
Okay, that's good because apparently I'm doing minutes.
October 7th, you guys are first up in the fall. You're the first county meeting on the 7th. So you have to tell me where you want to have it.
October 7th?
That's what you gave me, Mel.
All right, I'm just trying to find it.
Get out
Oh,
your
yeah.
calendar.
Yep. I actually, I was looking at Stony Creek Golf Course. I already started that. I was just
okay.
looking at my agenda. I already drafted up. So Stony Creek, that's where we're thinking. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody. We'll sign off.
Thank you. See some of you in June here.
Yep. All right. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.